I mean, when you put all that together, the idea of evil, pain, and suffering, a lot of evil things happen because of the curse, because of sin. Don't be mad at God. Be mad at the devil, right? Second of all, you have free will. Some people make bad decisions. But when you look at the answer to evil, pain, and suffering from God's perspective, what was God's answer? God's answer is, look at all the things I've done. Look at how mighty my creation is, the universe. Look at the animal life. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Authentic Christian Podcast. I am Aaron. This is Scott. And today we're talking about the problem of evil, pain, and suffering in the world. Thanks for hanging with us. This episode today, we're going to talk about the problem of evil, pain, and suffering. No matter how old you are well aware, if you're old enough to watch an episode of a podcast, that there are lots of evil things that happen in this world. Many people will use that as a reason they don't believe in God. They'll say things like, well, if God is all loving and he's all powerful, then God wouldn't allow this to happen. And that's not a new thought. It's 2024 when we record this episode. There was a philosopher, Epicurus, 3rd century BC, and he said this. This is his quote, 3rd century BC, so 2,300 years ago, 300 years before Jesus. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he's not omnipotent, not all-powerful. So if God could prevent evil, but he's not able to, like he would prevent it if he could, but he's not powerful enough, then he's not all-powerful, right? Is he able but not willing? So is God able to prevent it but not willing? Then he is malevolent, all right? That's probably the one I'm going to put bold in my notes, because God is able. And not that he's not willing, but there's a purpose for it, right? So is he both able and willing? Then where did evil come from? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? And so this is from 2,300 years ago. It's Epicurus, 3rd century BC. A lot of atheists today will make this same exact argument, maybe even use this quote. And so the first thing I would say, Scott, what is interesting about the idea of an atheist, someone who doesn't believe in God, claiming that this would be evil of God to do, or maybe morally unjust, the problem of evil, pain, and suffering, to an atheist?
They're just pontificating that themselves from their worldview.
Yeah.
There's no basis on it outside of their opinion. It's a pretty big problem.
Yeah. If you say,
how are you saying anything about evil?
Yeah, exactly.
And just what you feel about it?
Yeah. What basis do you have to say it's evil?
Yeah. It's like, I don't like that. Like the same way you don't like being in the cold, or is it just like how you feel about it?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from? So that's a pretty big problem with it. That's a pretty big problem with Epicurus' quote.
Yeah.
He is assuming to know in all cases what is good and what is evil.
Yeah.
What is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
That's even it's. If it's just up to me.
Yeah.
And I say it's evil, then you do it. What do I do about it?
Yeah.
What if a bunch of people go ahead and do it, but I say it's evil? Can I do anything about it? Why can't I do anything about it? Because I'm not really over them. Like, I'm not the source of where they came from, of creation, of truth, of justice, of right, of wrong, of anything. It's just my opinion. Yeah. Like, I don't have any power or authority to declare that to anybody.
Yeah. Well, in apologetics, it's sometimes called the moral argument.
Yeah.
Which is, how can you say something's evil? How can you claim, if you don't believe in God, how can you claim something's evil when you have no moral basis or standard to establish what's good and evil?
Yeah.
How can you tell me if you're an atheist, you don't believe in a God, how can you tell me that stealing or murder is wrong? Says who? Especially if evolution is true.
Well, we all know that it generally hurts everyone, so we agree not to do it.
So what?
The net positive, whatever.
Yeah, I know. Naturalistic evolution says I am an evolved animal. So if I'm an evolved animal, why can't I murder and steal from those who are weak to further my evolutionary genetics? If I'm stronger, why shouldn't I take from the weak?
Yep.
That's literally natural selection. The strong wins and passes its genetics on.
Yeah.
But you said it. You hit the nail on the head. They can say they don't like it, but they can't say that it's objectively morally wrong. Mm-hmm. They would have to just say, I don't like it.
And say, I think it's wrong because I said so.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Good for you. Really. At the end of the day, you're no one special.
Yeah.
Neither am I. If that was it, there was no God, there would be no such thing. It would be like you're saying.
Yeah.
Might as well oppress the weak. by that measure, I mean, the weak are just here taking up our space.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are evil.
And, ultimately,
and that's the way a lot of them do start to argue. That's what happened in Germany in the 40s and all that.
Yeah. And this episode, the whole episode is really not what is the answer to evil, pain, and suffering for the atheist. So that's kind of just something we're sort of discussing a little bit at the beginning. We've talked about that, I think, maybe in season 1, but that's been 4 years ago. So this episode, I think really we're going to focus on what about for those of us who believe in the Bible, those of us who believe the Bible is God's word. How do we deal with the problem of evil, pain, and suffering? And so obviously the only place to start with that is in the beginning, is in the book of Genesis. So go, if you have your Bibles with us, go to the book of Genesis. In Genesis chapter 1, God creates the world. What, Scott? What adjective would you use to describe it?
He spoke it into existence? What do you mean?
And it's created.
Oh, very good.
Very good, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Genesis 1:31, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
It says, then God saw everything he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the 6th day. So God creates everything good. I would say everything perfect, right? And they're in the Garden of Eden. What happens shortly after that?
They sin. And they suffer the consequences of the sin, which they were told before they did it.
Correct. So they were tempted, they fell into transgression, they sinned, like you said. And so look at Genesis chapter 3, because some sources of pain and suffering. Look, if you're going through something right now, if you're going through something, a death of a spouse, I want you to know right now, this episode is not maybe meant to be as comforting as much as it is more just intellectual, as far as like informational. That's what the Bible says about suffering and some answers to it. Now, maybe it would be comforting because we're going to talk about the story of Job, right? And basically, we'll get to the idea that God says, I know more than you, just trust me, right? But at least what we're going to do here is look at just some of the evidences, right? Some of the scriptures about it. So
it's about the theology of it.
This is
not how to overcome your grief.
Yes. And maybe it would help, but that's not exactly, I guess, the layout of this house episode is going to go, I guess. It's more of like an informational as opposed to like emotional support. Like these are verses God says about how he's going to get you through. It's more about this is the information. So just putting that out there. So everything's good in the garden. Mankind sins. They're tempted. They give. Eve was deceived. Adam wasn't deceived. 1 Timothy 2:12 or something like 13. And so sin enters the world. And the world is cursed because of sin. So a lot of these things that are from pain, evil, pain, and suffering come from the curse, right? So when you think about being mad because of some of these things, disease, cancer, viruses, other physical ailments, natural disasters, I think the appropriate place to put your anger or your frustration is not with God, but it's with the devil. Because the devil is the one that introduced sin into the world by tricking Eve, right? And then Adam fell for it as well. He went along with it. So let's look at the curse. Go to Genesis chapter 3, Scott. And if you don't mind, do you want to start reading? I guess read at verse 13.
Okay.
And just read down through it. We'll see what the curse was to the serpent. We'll see what the curse was to men, women, and to the ground, to the earth.
And the Lord God said to the woman, what is this you have done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. So the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all cattle, more than every beast of the field. On your belly you shall go, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. To the woman he said, I will greatly... You want to stop there?
Yeah, I was just going to say that right there in verse 15, sometimes called the proto-evangelium, which is the first promise of the gospel, hope, the blood of Christ, and that is, I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. And her seed, Galatians 3:16, would be Christ, not into seeds as of many, meaning Israel, but the seed as of one, which is Christ. 1 John 3:8 says he was manifested to destroy the works of the devil. So that's the promise of the Messiah who's going to come. So first time you sort of see that in Genesis 3:15. All right. Now, Genesis 3:16 is the curse to women.
To the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain, you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you.
Okay.
Then
So that's the woman. So multiply your sorrow and conception, right? In pain, you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband. Have we talked about what this means?
I don't think so.
Your desire shall be for your husband. All right. For years, I thought this meant sexual desire. I'm like, your desire of the wife is for the husband. Like, but then I thought, that's not curse, is it? I mean, is this a curse to the woman? Like, you got to desire your husband, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Well, I remember sometime, maybe Dave Miller, I think maybe heard him speak on this. Look over in chapter 4, and we'll come back. In chapter 4, Cain and Abel, story of Cain and Abel, right? And you remember, they're told by God to bring an offering. Cain did not do it according to how God told him, instructed him, and Abel did. Mm-hmm. Abel's is accepted, Cain's isn't, right? And look at verse 6. This is what the Lord said to Cain after Cain was angry, right? Cain was very angry, verse 5, and his countenance fell. Read verses 6 and 7.
So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it.
So what does it mean in there where it says, sin lies at the door, its desire is for you? Sin wants to, its desire is for you. What's that mean? Sin wants to what?
I mean, it wants to rule you.
Okay.
I mean, in a sense that if you want to
look,
anthropomorphize the sin, right?
So sin, yes. Sin wants to, sin's desire for you means sin wants to rule over you, right? I think in Hebrew it's the exact same phraseology, wording. So now go back to verse 16. I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband. What do you think that means? I don't think it's a sexual desire. Mm-hmm. I think it's the desire to take control. In 1 Timothy 2, you've got the instruction for men to be the teachers, to be the ones that lead public prayers when there's men and women gathered together. The men are spiritually supposed to be the leaders, right? 1 Timothy 3, if you want to be an elder, you have to be the husband of one wife. And what if you look at 1 Timothy chapter 2, look at 1 Timothy 2. What does it tell you? 1 Timothy 2 in verse 12. I did not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, but to be in quietness or silence. So he says, look, men are supposed to be the teachers, not the women, right? And what's the reason? Some people say, oh, that's just cultural. Verse 13 says, for Adam was formed first, then Eve. Mm-hmm. Adam was not deceived. The woman was deceived and fell into transgression. Nevertheless, she will be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with self-control. That doesn't mean if you don't have children, you can't be saved. It means the women's role. Mm-hmm. So I think what the curse, all the way back in Genesis chapter 3 is essentially God is saying, hey, look, men are supposed to be the leaders in these spiritual aspects, and the desire is going to be to rebel against that. Now, if there's a different explanation of that makes more sense, please send me an email. But I think that's what he's saying here.
Okay.
What else would it be?
What else would it be? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Not really thought about it a lot. Not really, to be honest.
I think what he's saying is, hey, look, to Eve, you might have the desire to take the lead.
Yeah, I never thought about the particular type of desire. I mean, I don't know if I assumed it was necessarily sexual or not, but I don't know. I never get a lot of that. That's good. That's interesting.
I think if you think about godly women who fulfill their role, it's a beautiful relationship. And then you think about the women in the Bible who tried to take the lead, like Jezebel, right? Like Athaliah. All these women who, of course, Athaliah, I don't think had a husband, but Jezebel, she basically corrupted Ahab whenever she tried to take the lead. I'm just saying. That's what I think it is.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, we're eating up with a lot of modern day feminism. That way it teaches women to women to give into that temptation.
The helper, the helpmeet, right? You know, in my relationship, my wife helps me in a lot of things. I mean, she's brilliant, but she understands her role. I don't mean I'm talking about she understands what God wants her, to the role she wants God to fulfill. But like, there's a lot of times educationally, me and her have conversations. I'm like, wow, that's brilliant. I never thought of that, right?
Yeah.
But
wisdom's personified as females. It's not that they're
exactly
women aren't smart.
Exactly.
It's just where God put them in relation to what happened in the garden.
She's my other half.
It just is what it is.
That's right. She's my
other
half.
He put it.
So go back to Genesis 3. Look at verse 18 and 19. This is now, or verse 17. This is to Adam, curse to the man.
Yep. You said 3:18.
Verse 17.
Got you. Cursed is the ground for your... Oh, then to Adam he said, because you have heeded the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree of which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life, both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face, in your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you are taken, for dust you are, and to dust you shall return.
So essentially you have here the curse to the man, and it seems like the curse on the ground, the physical world. So you've got thorns and thistles it shall bring forth. You shall eat the herb. So basically, you're going to work hard, right? It's going to be more difficult. Thorns and thistles are going to come. And so essentially the physical world is cursed. And so they're kicked out of the garden as an act of mercy, honestly, because if they stayed in the garden, what would happen? They'd eat of the tree of life. It says they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, so they wouldn't eat of the tree of life and live forever. Who wants to live forever in a sin-cursed world, right? So God kicks them out. And so when you look at some of the reasons for evil, pain, and suffering in the physical world, disease, death, cancer, viruses, natural disasters, a lot of these are caused by the sin in the garden, right? Some is caused by free will, right? I mean, what are some sins you could think of that are caused by free will?
Yeah, I mean, drunk driving, murder, theft, lying, cheating.
Yep.
You know, a lot of, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if God wanted to give you free will, which the Bible teaches that he does, and not just free will in your totally depraved prison like Calvinism teaches, but free will to choose good or evil. John 5:34, Jesus said, I say these things that you might be saved. In John 5:40, he said, but you're not willing, free will, you're not willing to come to me that you may have life. So either Jesus was confused or people had free will. Jesus wasn't confused. So God didn't create people as robots. We are free to make our own choices, good or bad. Yep. And so some evil, pain, and suffering is going to be caused by people's free will decisions, right? And so, you know, there is a large, I don't know if I'd say how large it is, but there is a portion of what most people would call that would claim to be Christian, right? That I don't think is orthodox nor biblical, but it's called Calvinism. And Calvinism essentially teaches that God has foreordained every single thing. I think that if you're watching this and you're a Calvinist and I'm misrepresenting, please send me some information and I'll clear it up. But I've watched quite a few descriptions, videos, lessons from Calvinists. I think Calvinists have a really hard time, Reformed theology, doctrines of grace, they call it all those different names, dealing with this problem. Because essentially, I went and got an article. So John Piper is a very popular Calvinist, and he had something on his website. And he said, the question was asked to him, has every single little thing in the world been predestined? He did a video and said yes. And he mentioned Spurgeon, who's a preacher in the 1600s in England. He said, yeah, there's this great line by Spurgeon about even the dust motes, the small specks of dust. Let me read you what Piper said. This is John Piper. I do not believe biblical. He says, has God determined every tiny detail in the universe, such as dust particles in the air and all of our besetting sins? Has God predestined everything that you ever did? He says, yes. There is a great quote. Is that the hunter on the cartoons? There is a great quote from Spurgeon about dust motes. You may not even know what a dust mote is, but when I get up in the morning, this is John Piper writing, in my room, there's a window to the side of the bed, and a beam of light will be shining through it at certain times of the year when I get it. Now, when I look through the dark, I see nothing. But when I look through the beam, I see dust in the room. It's flying around, and I say, I'm breathing that stuff? Yes, you are. And Spurgeon says that every one of those particles is keeping its position and moving through the air by God's appointment. And then later in the article, he says this. So the macro world and the micro world are all managed by God, which means, yes, every horrible thing and every sinful thing is ultimately governed by God. And he says that's a problem. But the center of the solution is a choice you have to make about the cross. This is what has centered me anyway. He says when you go to Acts 4:27 and 28, right? Go to Acts 4:27 and 28.
All right.
Acts 4:27 and 28. And essentially what he's going to say is he's going to say, well, since God foreordained that Jesus was going to die on the cross, like since God had that in the plan, he's going to try to conflate that with the fact that every single person in the story didn't have free will, right? So he says this, when you go to Acts 4:27, 28, and you read that Herod and Pontius Pilate and the Gentiles and the Jews were all gathered together to do what God's hand and God's plan had predestined to take place in the killing of Jesus. You have God's plan and hand predestining the most horrible sins ever committed, right? Read Acts 4:27 and 28, Scott.
All right. For truly against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, were gathered together to do whatever your hand and your purpose determined before to be done. Now,
okay, that's the verse. So what he's saying is hey, that verse tells you that everything Herod ever did, everything Pilate ever did, everything the Jews ever did, that was foreordained by God and they had no free will in the matter. Is that what you think the passage is saying? Not at all. The passage is saying that Jesus was the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. God knew that Jesus was going to die. But God, in his foreknowledge, knew what those choices the people would make. He knew what Pilate would make. He knew what Herod would make, their free will decisions. God did not say, Pilate, you and Herod are going to kill Jesus and you have no choice in the matter. That would be unjust, right? The Bible says that.
Knowing
right?
ahead of time
isn't
the same thing as forcing it to happen.
That's exactly right.
You can, I guess the analogy isn't perfect because you're not God, but you could stand on top of a mountain and see two trains, one on one side, one on the other, heading towards each other, and know in the future they're going to run into each other and crash.
Yep.
You didn't make it happen.
That's right.
You know it was going to happen.
Yep.
But the people who built the tracks and the people who got on the train, the people who started it and loaded the fuel, those are the people that made the choices to make that happen.
That's right.
You didn't make it happen.
That's right.
That's not, there's obviously limitations to how you can analogize things in this world and try to make it exactly fit the way that God perceives everything. Who knows how God sees everything in a sense, like what does it look like in his mind? But God is able to see everything, not just in this moment, but in all moments because he exists outside of time. So he's able to see it. It's not the same as forcing it, though.
Exactly. God knew that was going to happen to Jesus, but God knew he's powerful enough to let people make their own decisions and still carry out his purpose.
Yeah, 100%.
Thanks for watching GBN. If you like programs like this and you want to watch other programs, maybe new ones that you haven't heard of yet, that look, there's something out there. I just haven't figured it out yet or discovered it. Go to the App Store. You can also find this on Apple TV, Roku. Search Gospel Broadcasting Network and download the app. It's a little globe. It says GBN in the middle. And you can open up the app. I have the app open right now. And you can look at all these different programs. Truth on Wheels, Drawn Toward God, which is like an animated series that as it's explained in the Bible, it sort of draws out the image. Counterpoint, The Authentic Christian, which is one of the shows that I'm on. Make It Plain, Preaching the Gospel, Answering the Error. So many different programs that I personally grow from myself, even before I came to GBN. We also have Books of the Bible. You can watch people who've been teaching books of the Bible at preaching schools for years teach through 50, I think right now, books of the Bible, verse by verse. And you can really just use this app to study and learn more about God's word. So I'd recommend, if you like Bible study, if you want to grow closer to God, draw near to him, James 4, 7 through 10, download the Gospel Broadcasting Network app, and it'll help your everyday studies. Thanks for watching. Yeah. So the closing quote, John Piper says, therefore, the worst sin that was ever committed was ordained by God. And the answer is yes. He controls everything. He does it for his glory and our good. I think this is important to notice in the idea of evil, pain, and suffering, because if someone I know is to be murdered, which sounds more biblical? The fact that God gave people free will and they use that free will to murder somebody, or that God foreordained it to happen?
Yeah.
Who do you want to put the blame behind? Is it God, or is it you put the blame behind a malevolent force like the devil who introduces temptations, or basically put the malevolent force behind the person who chose to do that? Or do you say, no, God forced them to do that? No.
God neither by the way that the Calvinists would describe it, through exercising divine power forced it to happen. He didn't do it that way. He didn't do it through making you be born that way either. He didn't. There's a lot of ways you could talk about this. God made me do it directly, they would say, maybe the Calvinists.
Yep.
Other people might say, well, I can't help it. I'm only human. It's just the way God made me. I just feel this way about this and that. Sometimes I just can't control my anger. I'm only human.
Yeah.
If you're using it that way, that's another excuse. You're blaming God.
You're right.
God doesn't make us do anything.
Agreed.
Through direct or indirect means.
Agreed.
He doesn't force us.
This sort of always confuses me too. When I see like a Calvinistic group that has like a huge movement opposing abortion, and I'm like,
why bother doing anything?
I'm confused. Now maybe the Calvinists that do this would say, oh, no, we don't believe that. We don't believe that. maybe they would say, well, God is using our actions to prevent. But it's like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you literally are saying that God has foreordained the killing of Christ and made the people do it that did it, and also every person that ever has an abortion, God foreordained it for his glory to punish sinners, why are you out there on the street trying to convince people not to do it? Look, if you're a Calvinist and I'm misrepresenting you, please send me an email. Explain this to me. But because I have never seen a good explanation, maybe it's out there, right? I'm not omniscient like God.
I don't know how they view that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear about that.
The only thing I can figure is they must look at it like a painting, and it really doesn't matter. You know, there's the ugly parts and the good parts, and he's just gonna, it doesn't matter to you. Like, you're just things to God.
Yeah,
basically. You know, like,
if that's true, should you be out there trying to get people to do something God didn't foreordain them to do?
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
opposing his will.
To be honest, I don't know, man. I mean, even when I try really hard to try to make it make sense, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. Well, if you're a Calvinist, you're Reformed, send me some information.
Yeah,
I would love to read it. All right. So when you go back to that, the quote at the beginning, Epicurus. I always want to say Epicurious. Maybe that's how it's pronounced, but there's no I in it. So Epicurus. He basically, and many other, I mean, I remember watching a Kyle Butt video. J.L. Mackey, I think, was the atheist that Kyle quoted. I'll try to put the Kyle Butt video in the resource page. You can go watch Kyle's video. Kyle and Eric Lyons and Dave Miller and Jeff Miller and all the guys at Apologetics Press have done a great job answering some of these questions on evil, pain, suffering, and other apologetics stuff. But anyway, so one of the atheists said, if you could show that there is a benefit to suffering, then that would completely destroy the argument. And so, I mean, I think it's clear if you look at the Bible that there's a benefit. You say, why would God allow evil, pain, and suffering? Is there a benefit? Well, I would basically say, okay, let's use an analogy. Is there some harm that you would allow for a greater good, right? Example, I have 3 children. Let's say one of my children are sick. They have to go to the doctor. The doctor says you have your child has an infection. We have to administer antibiotics through an IV, right? So that your child doesn't die. And someone asked me, Aaron, would you allow them to do that? I'm like, well, of course I would. And they're like, yeah, but it would hurt your child's arm. That needle's going to sting a little bit. And I would say, well, who cares? Do it. Of course it's okay to cause a little bit of pain for a greater good, right? And so I think when you think about the Bible, you see that clearly that evil, pain, and suffering, the goal of those things on this earth is to remind us, right? It's part of the curse, but God uses that to remind us that this world what? Is this world?
It's not.
What's the song?
Forever. It's not my home.
Yep.
This
world is not my home.
I'm trying to understand what you were going for.
Yeah. This world is not my home.
Yep.
I'm just a passing through.
Yep.
This evil, pain, and suffering is supposed to point us to our home, which is not on earth. It's not this planet. There is something much more important. The goal of this life is to prepare us, to prepare our souls for the next life. And the Bible says that life is either going to be in one of 2 places, Scott. What are they?
Say that again. I was reading this from here. I might bring up.
The Bible says that essentially our goal in life, this earth, is to get us ready for the next life, which will be in one of 2 destinations.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You'll either be in heaven or you'll be in hell in the ultimate sense once it's all said and done.
Yeah. So essentially, like, if you're thinking that this life is just we're supposed to always be happy, or this life is supposed to be extremely comfortable, then you're sort of missing the point of this world.
This life is more like a trial now.
Yes.
Like you got to be faithful to the Lord, regardless of whatever may be going on right here around you, your circumstances, and look forward to the next one, because everything in this one is going to end. And I think about that a lot. Like we're not going to count time the same way, but in some sense, we'll perceive some things, we'll worship, we'll whatever. I don't know how it all work, but 10 billion years from now, I'm not going to care, man, about any of this stuff. Like, I don't know if I can forget it or not in that life and that body or whatever, but at the very least, eventually it'll be nothing to us anymore. It'll be a long gone thing that doesn't have anything to do with us anymore, any bearing on how we feel right now or whatever. Like when we're in heaven, like, this won't matter.
Imagine if you could talk to someone who was martyred for their faith, like Stephen. Imagine if you could talk to Stephen and say, Stephen, was it painful when they stoned you? Absolutely it was, I don't get the idea Stephen got lucky enough to just get hit with one rock and knocked him out and he died, right? He's literally like calling on God, epikaleo, from episode 1. So the question is, like, if you could ask Stephen right now, hey, was it worth it? What would he say?
Absolutely.
Absolutely it was worth it.
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 minutes of pain for an eternity in heaven.
Absolutely.
Maybe that. Maybe probably less than that. Probably less than that. But that's what you're getting at,
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
Even if you suffer for 100 years or 900 years, like some of those early people, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
How long is that in eternity?
Yeah.
How long is that when time doesn't matter anymore?
Yeah.
It really just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the only thing that matters is making sure that you're in the right place when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Right? The rest of it doesn't matter.
You're right. I remember in one of Kyle Butt's lessons, he used an analogy of a piece of plastic fruit. And he said, let's say that you grabbed a piece of plastic fruit and you took a bite and you realize it's plastic and you're like, this thing tastes awful. And you say, this isn't very good fruit. And he said, no, you're missing the point. That fruit's not for eating. That fruit's for decoration. And he said, so essentially you're missing the point of this life if you think that this life is just to be comfortable, or if this life is just to gain wealth, or this life is to whatever you think the point of this life is. If you're not looking at it through the biblical mindset, you're missing the point.
Yep.
And the point is that this life is for soul developing of souls, right? The developing of the soul so that you can spend eternity in heaven. And so, no matter what you go through, now I say this, I don't want to say this lightly, and I'm playing off what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 4:17, but I don't want you to take this lightly. There are probably some people that are watching this that are going through tough physical things. You've been in a lot of pain lately, like I'm not trying to make light of it, right? There are some people that we know that have had life-changing accidents that will affect them forever, right? I'm not trying to downplay it. But Paul said in 2 Corinthians 4:17, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. And so Paul basically said our light affliction.
Mm-hmm. That's why I don't think it's downplaying it.
No.
The Bible describes it that way. It's
a
light affliction. It's just for a moment.
Yeah. And if someone's going through something really awful right now, if someone lost someone close to them, loss of a child, cancer diagnosis, I'm not trying to downplay that. I know that's awful.
There's still sorrow and grief.
Of course.
Jesus wept.
Of course.
But in the grand scheme,
you
don't have to cry forever.
Yeah.
That's kind of
the
point, right?
Yeah. Look at 2 Corinthians 11. Paul says his light affliction. What did Paul go through? 2 Corinthians 11, look at verse 22. Read from 22 all the way down to 28. 22 through 28.
Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more. In labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequently, in deaths often. From the Jews 5 times I received 40 stripes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I've been in the deep. In journeys often, in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen, in perils of the Gentiles, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and toil and sleeplessness often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness. Besides the other things, what comes upon me daily, my deep concern for all the churches. Who is weak? You wanted me to stop at 28?
Yeah, you can read 29.
Who is weak, and I am not weak? Who is made to stumble, and I do not burn with indignation?
Read 30.
If I must boast, I will boast in the things which concern my infirmity. The God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who is blessed forever, knows that I am not lying.
Okay. So he's essentially there. I mean, I guess in verse 32, read
Damascus.
Read 32 and 33.
Yeah, in Damascus, the governor under Aretas, the king, was guarding the city of Damascus with a garrison, desiring to arrest me. But I was let down in a basket through a window in the wall and escaped from his hands.
So essentially, he goes through and says, there are these false teachers. And he's like, look, they're trying to court you. Look at my resume, right? He says, I'm speaking like a fool. Just bear with me. but look at my resume. And all the things he went through, he says, our light affliction.
I think when he says, I speak as a fool, he's saying like, of course they aren't. Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I'm more, you know?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And he basically saying, let me boast for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, just bear with me as I, you know?
Yeah.
But I think he says our light affliction. And so the question is, if you don't look at this earth with through the appropriate lens, and that is the lens of eternity, then you'll come to this idea that some atheists and people say, you know, well, the problem of evil, pain, and suffering shows there's not a God. Well, you can say, well, what standard do you have? And they're like, okay, well, the problem of pointless suffering. It's like, okay, well, what if there's a reason? And one atheist, J.L. Mackey, Kyle Butt in his video, says, one atheist, J.L. Mackey, said, well, if you could show that pain and suffering had a point, it wasn't pointless, then atheism would be wrong. And so essentially, what if there is a reason? What if the reason, the point of suffering in this earth, that God took a bad thing, sin, and he gave it a purpose, and that is that basically there is an infinite God. And if there is somebody who could give you the reason for suffering or could make something good out of something bad, who would be the one to decide that? Well, if God exists, if there's an infinite God that exists, he would be the one that knows the answer to that question. And so I want to go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, I don't know if you got it in the notes, but James 1:2-8.
Yeah, read it.
My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given him, but let him ask in faith, with nothing doubted. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He's a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways.
Mm-hmm.
Trials, tribulations, they produce things.
Patience.
What do they produce? They produce patience. They lead to what? Our perfection, our completion.
A man with the patience.
What are we supposed to be like? Christ.
Yeah.
Did he suffer? Can we become anything like him if we don't face trials of our own?
Mm-hmm.
Can we even attempt to understand what it's like to be a Christian if we don't do that? A Christian, whatever way you want to emphasize it. You know, you get the point. If you really want to be like Jesus, you're going to be his disciple. It's not above the servant I'm about to misquote
Servants
it.
Not above his master.
Not above his master.
Mm-hmm.
What did he go through?
Yeah.
Did it do anything to him? I mean, you know, what kind of benefits can you see in the suffering in the way that he responded while he suffered?
Yeah.
What did it produce in his ministry, in the reactions of others, and in so many different ways? Like, we need to learn how to take suffering and trials with patience and appreciate what happens to us on the other end when we overcome them, rather than collapsing under them.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But how do we overcome them? What we talked about earlier. We got to learn to rely on the Lord. Like, A starts with A. We talked about him earlier in another episode this season.
Adam, Apple, Ahaziah. What's context?
First person we talked about in the Kings.
Asa. Yeah.
Asa. It just brings my mind there again.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, you think about in the book of Acts chapter 5 and verse 41. So they departed from the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name. Mm-hmm. So whenever they were persecuted, they rejoiced. Why? Because they said, we're getting to experience a little bit of what Christ experienced. Yeah. He went through the suffering and shame. They rejoiced to be persecuted, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what the Sermon on the Mount says. Rejoice whenever you're persecuted, blessed, right? Matthew 5:13, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I lost part of my train of thought, but
hey, that happens to me, quite a bit. So don't feel so bad. All right. Blessed are they when you, Matthew 5:11, verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil things against you falsely for my sake, Jesus speaking. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So essentially, you've got this idea of, okay, an infinite God knows the answer to that question of evil, pain, and suffering. What is the purpose? And so, you mentioned earlier in James 1:2-8, the idea of patience.
Yeah.
And so the guy I want to look at in the Old Testament has the patience of
Job.
not Job, Job.
Job.
So go to the book of
Job.
Job. Job. That's Hebrew, right?
Yeah.
Yob,
Job.
Yob. Y-O-B.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
J is more like, Jehovah.
Yeah. Jehovah.
Yahweh.
Yahweh,
It's the
Jesus,
same word, right?
Yeshua. Yeah. So go to the book of Job, which is in the middle of your middle of your Bible. It's in the wisdom literature. Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. So Job is a man that lived in the land of Uz, which, where is the land of Uz? Somewhere in the Bible lands. My take, which doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, it's based off 2 Bible passages. It's not like I did historic research on it, right? But Jeremiah 25:20 says, all the mixed multitudes, the kings of the land of Uz, all the kings of the land of the Philistines, Edom, Moab, and the people of Ammon. So right there, like southwest of Jerusalem and south of Jerusalem towards Egypt is where the Philistines were, and Edom. So then Lamentations 4:21 says, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, you who dwell in the land of Uz. And so from Job's description throughout the book, it seems like he lives after the flood, so probably time of Abraham. So if, Jeremiah in 25:20 and Lamentations, Jeremiah wrote that, 4:21, daughter of Edom who dwell in the land of Uz. Seems to me like Job lives in the land of Edom, at least historically where Edom, would have been. Because if he's the time of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Esau, and Edom is the descendants of Esau, right? So
yeah,
he lives in that area between Jerusalem and Egypt.
Wouldn't have been called
Arabian Peninsula. Yeah, it would have been called Uz at his time, right? He's a faithful man. What happens in the story of Job? Satan comes to God and says, God, God says, where have you been, Satan? He said, I'm going to and fro on the earth, right? From walking up and down on it. What does that mean? Seems to me he's going throughout the earth looking for people to tempt, right? Mm-hmm. And so God says, have you considered Job? Which seems to imply to me the reason that Satan was going to and fro on the earth was to look for people to tempt. So it's almost like he goes to and fro on the earth. He finds someone, he comes back and talks to God about it and seeks permission, right? That's what it seems like to me, right? And God says, have you considered my servant Job? And the devil says, you put a hedge around him. You protect him. He says, if you touch all that he has, he'll curse you to your face. So God gives Satan, the adversary, the accuser, the permission to destroy all that he has. He says, but you can't kill him, right? Can't kill him. And it's funny, it doesn't seem like it ever affects his wife directly. I don't know if that's because the Bible says
one flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about that.
Man shall leave
unbelieving sanctified by the believing spouse, that kind of notion.
One flesh. So, husband, Genesis 2:24, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, cling to his wife, two shall become one flesh. Mm-hmm. So when he says, hey, you can't touch him, maybe that includes his wife, right? So anyway.
I thought that too. I can't prove it, but yeah.
Yeah. So God gives the devil permission. And first, the oxen and donkeys are stolen, and his servants that were protecting him are killed. Then his sheep and his servants are burned up. The sheep and the servants are both burned up by lightning, I believe, or fire from heaven. Then the camels are stolen, and the servants protecting them are killed. And then, after all of his possessions, at least most of his possessions that we know about, are taken, all 10 of his children, I think it's 7 sons and 3 daughters. Is that right? They're eating in the house. Let me look. I think it's 7 sons and 3 daughters. I know it's 7 and 3. Could be 7 daughters and 3 sons. Let's see. Oh, verse 2 of Job 1. 7 sons and 3 daughters. So he has all 10 kids. They're eating in a house, and a great wind comes and falls on them, and all 10 of them die. All 10 of his kids. I got 3 kids. I cannot imagine that in one day. Mm-hmm. And Job says, Job 1:21, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And all this Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. And so Job passes that test with flying colors, right? And then Job comes in Job chapter 2. Satan basically comes back. God says, where have you been? Oh, I'm going to and fro on the earth and walking up and down on it, right? Genesis 2:4 or Job 2:4. And the Lord says, hey, have you considered Job? And he says, what? Let me look it up. Flesh, skin for skin. All the man has he'll give for his life. He basically says, look, if you just let me touch him, he would curse you. His stuff, okay, that's one thing. But if you just let me curse him. And essentially he says, look, you can't kill him, but you can afflict him. And so these boils break out on Job from the top of his head to the sole of his feet. And that's when his wife says, curse God and die. Look, obviously what she said was wrong. He said, you speak as a foolish woman speak. I'm going to throw her a bone. All 10 of her kids just died. Like, she shouldn't have said curse God and die, but still, like, She just went
she
through.
would have she failed the test.
Yeah, it's not like her groceries. It's not like someone stole her groceries.
Mhm.
Like 10 of her kids died. Right?
It's pretty hardcore.
It is hardcore. But you're right. Still, Job passed the test, and she would have sinned in that regard. Anyway, so look at Job chapter 2, verse 10. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speak. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? So he says, look, you're speaking like someone foolish. It's funny, he didn't say you're a fool. He said you're speaking like a foolish woman, like another woman that's foolish. Anyway, shall we indeed accept good from God, but not bad? He says, God's treated us so good, And it says, in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Now, here in chapter 2, verses 11 through 13, you've got his three friends, right? His three friends, they come and they sit with him for 7 days. And that's the best advice, the best counsel they gave him, is when they sat there silently, right? And then from Job chapter 3 through Job chapter 37, these three friends and Job go back and forth. And these three friends are giving essentially human wisdom. They think they know what's going on, right? And Job would respond back. And then later, Elihu, another one of Job's friends, comes and speaks. And so throughout this book, in Job 38, after 37 chapters of this story, God finally speaks to Job. And Job has been saying, hey, look, I want a hearing with the Creator. I want to basically say what's going on, what happened. I haven't done anything wrong, right? So in Job 38, God finally answers. So when I look at this, I think about, okay, Job, if he's one of the greatest examples of human pain and suffering, right? Evil pain and suffering. Why did these evil things happen to him? Was there a purpose, right? We know from seeing behind the curtain, what's the purpose? God is vindicating Job's character. He's giving him as an example to inspire and comfort billions of people, maybe trillions, over the last 4,000 years, right? And yet Job doesn't know that. And so what is God's response to Job? First of all, he doesn't tell Job why he's going through these things, right? But in 38 through 41, 42, what does he do? He essentially, in verse 38, we're going to read 38.
38. Where are we at?
Chapter 38.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's going to tell Job, hey, you gird yourself up like a man. It says, the Lord answered Job out of a whirlwind. And then I want to just read a little bit. Notice, let's just read a little bit and think to yourself, how does God answer this question of evil, pain, and suffering with Job? What does he say? How does he respond to Job? Why should you trust me, Job? Okay. And
Let me read it.
Yeah, read it.
Chapter 38.
Just start in chapter 38 and read 10, 12 verses and we'll talk.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. I want to talk to you real quick about the Authentic Christian resource page. Many times during the episodes, Scott or myself will bring up a great sermon, another video, maybe an article that we recommend that you watch. And so if you go to the GBN website, gbntv.org, and you click on resources, and then you click on the Authentic Christian, and we'll have a video on screen to show you this, you can find the resource page. And then you just scroll down and find the particular episode that we're discussing. And you'll have the episode where you can watch it. And then below that, you're going to have a bunch of links that'll be blue. And so we'll have all the things we've recommended in the episode. You can watch that there. You'll have articles, sermons, videos, and that'll give you more things that you can study if you want to learn more about the topic we've been discussing in that episode. So check it out, the Authentic Christian resource page, gbntv.org, resources, Authentic Christian. And thanks for watching. We'll see you back in a minute.
Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you. There you go. Quit you like a man. Get ready. Prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, when I fixed my limit for it and set bars and doors, when I said, this far you may come, but no farther, and here your proud waves must stop.
He says, that's good.
Yep.
He says in the first 11 verses, he says, who created the universe? I did.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Yeah.
You were nothing. I hadn't knitted you together in your mother's womb yet, right? He's saying, you don't know anything like I know. I spoke the universe into existence. What kind of power does that take? I spoke a universe into existence. I'm going to put in the resource, the resource page, the Authentic Christian resource page, I want you to watch a series of videos on the cosmos by Branyon May from World Video Bible School. It's going to be on our fine-tuned cosmos, how big the size of just our solar system, and then, of course, the universe is. I want you to watch this stuff and think, this is the stuff that God is telling Job. They didn't even have all this research now that we have, but God is saying, where were you when I created all of this, right? Mm-hmm. And now he's just talking about the universe. Where were you when I basically put the sea together, the oceans, right? Where were you when I, built the earth? I literally just in the last couple of weeks was trying to move to tear down an overhang off a shed of a house we bought last year. That thing was it took me all day, and it was 30 feet by 10 feet wide. Humans, we cannot do, even with all our machinery. I love how you'll say 15 excavators and all this to flatten maybe 1 acre of ground or whatever. I'm not, that's not, if you're a construction guy, you're it only takes 6 excavators. No, yeah. But I'm just saying to make 1 or 2 or 3 acres for a development, and God speaks the universe into existence. And he says to Job, do you realize who you're talking to? Right? So then he goes, so go watch the Authentic Christian podcast resource page. Go watch this series of videos on the solar system by Branyon May. All right. Go ahead. You have something you're going to say?
No, I was just seeing if I need to start back.
Okay. Yeah. Look at verse 12. Now he's going to continue to talk about all these things in the universe. He talks about the paths in the sea. He talks about the commanding the morning, right? Like the sun, the moon, the solar system, the earth, how it functions. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and keep reading.
Where was that? 12. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth and the wicked be shaken out? It takes on form like clay under a seal and stands out like a garment. From the wicked, their light is withheld, and the upraised arm is broken. Have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, or have you seen the doors of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me if you know all this.
He talks about the springs of the sea. How would anybody, no one, unless it was very, very, very shallow ocean and they saw it. Most of this stuff that now with our technology, we've been able to dive deep in the ocean, we're able to discover this stuff that I don't know how Job would have known that.
Yeah, he talks about, the water gushing forth from the womb earlier.
Yeah.
Verse 8.
Yeah.
Shut in the sea with the doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb.
Go skip down. He's essentially talking all about the creation, right? That's the first thing that he basically discusses. Go down. He starts in verse 31, 32, talking about the solar system. I want to skip down to where he starts talking about animals. Go to chapter 38, verse 39. This is where he starts to move in from the created order of the universe and the earth to start talking about animals. Now he's going to start talking about all the animals he created.
38.
Yeah, 38, 39.
All right. When the dust hardens in clumps and the clods cling together, can you hunt the prey for the lion or satisfy the appetite of the young lions? When they crouch in their dens or lurk in their lairs to lie in wait, who provides food for the raven when its young ones cry to God and wander about for lack of food? You want me to keep going in 39?
Keep going.
39:1.
Yep.
Do you know the time when the wild mountain goats bear young, or can you mark when the deer gives birth? Can you number the months that they fulfill, or do you know the time when they bear young? They bow down, they bring forth their young, they deliver their offspring. Their young ones are healthy, they grow strong with grain, they depart and do not return to them. Who set the wild donkey free? Who loosed the bands of the onager? I don't know what that is. Whose home I have made the wilderness.
The onager is a donkey.
That's what it is?
Species of wild donkey.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just another name. In the barren land, his dwelling. He scorns the tumult of the city. He does not heed the shouts of the driver. That's true. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. Will the wild ox be willing to serve you? Will he bed by your manger? Can you bind the wild ox with the furrow in the furrow with ropes, or will he plow the valleys behind you? Will you trust him because his strength is great, or you will leave your labor to him? Will you trust him to bring home your grain and gather it to your threshing floor? The wings of the ostrich wave proudly.
That's good. So essentially, throughout this whole chapter of 39, what is he saying? He's saying, what do you know about all these animals? Do you know when this animal gives birth and where this animal gets its food and where this animal beds down and where this animal hunts, where this animal lives, this wild animal you can't tame? He's essentially saying what?
You don't know anything.
You don't know anything
Like,
about all this, right?
You're just not in a position to be questioning me.
Yeah. And so essentially, what is God's answer to Job when Job is struggling with evil, pain, and suffering? He's essentially telling him, Job, I am so smart to do, and I'm so powerful to create all these things. I know so much more than you do. And the takeaway would be you should just what?
Trust
God. Trust that God has. You might not understand the reason why God is doing certain things, but you need to trust him. In the lessons we look at them in the Old Testament, when did their problems start? When they stopped trusting God, right? So whether it's your faithfulness, whether it's your pride, whether it's this idea of you're going through something evil, pain, and suffering, what you need to rely on, God's answer to Job. God could have, he could have went so many different ways with it, right? But what God decided to say is, hey, look at all this stuff that I've created. A lot of this stuff, we're still trying to figure out how animals even do it, right? I heard Kyle give a lesson, Kyle Butt talk about, we spent millions of dollars to just try to create a little drone that can do what a housefly can do. Like it can fly full speed and flip upside down and stop immediately. And we can't do that. And yet a housefly, I got home and told my wife, I was like, hey, Kyle was talking about how impressive these little houseflies are. Should I stop killing them? I was joking. She's like, no. I'm like, okay. Even the smallest thing that we think are pests are so amazingly, wonderfully designed by a creator. And sometimes we don't know why we're going through certain things. And God's answer to Job is, trust me, you don't know what I know. And then, of course, read verses chapter 40, verses 1 through 5. Chapter 40, verses 1 through 5.
Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, shall the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? He who rebukes God, let him answer it. And then Job answered the Lord and said, I'm sorry, you said keep going to where?
Yeah, it's good. No, I said through 5.
Just through 5?
Yeah.
Then Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am vile. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand over my mouth. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer. But yet twice, but I will proceed no further.
He says, okay, God, I get it. I'm sorry. I'm done. I won't. And then God's like, no, I'm not done yet. Right? So then in verse 6, he starts into what we're very familiar with and what we talked a lot about on our episode about dinosaurs, which is in chapter 40, verse 6, he starts talking about Behemoth. And in chapter 1, he talks about Leviathan. And he describes two of the most magnificent animals that have ever been on the face of this earth. The Behemoth, which is likely a long tail, long neck, sauropod, like Apatosaurus, Brontosaurus, right? Swings its tail like a cedar. And he says, if I made those things, who are you, right? And it's the same thing, but on another level. If I was powerful enough to make that animal, don't you think you should trust me? And Job 41, Leviathan. Nobody. This thing is like a fire-breathing sea dragon, right? And he says, I made these things. If I can make all these things and I'm this powerful, then when you're going through something tough, what's God's answer? Just trust me.
Yeah.
Just trust me. You don't know all the you don't know everything going on. And of course, we have so much more information. We look at it from outside. Like we saw what was going on with Job. Job doesn't get chapters 1 and 2.
No.
We get chapters 1 and 2. Job doesn't. And so in chapter 42, the end of the book, verses 1 through 6, look at how Job, look at how the book ends. And remember, Job, he's not given, throughout this entire book, he's not given the answer. And so without even the answer that we have in chapters 1 and 2, if I'm going through something tough, like if you're going through some physical stuff, if God spoke to you and said, hey, Scott, the only reason you're going through this is because the devil basically wants to tempt you. Like that would be helpful for you to understand, like, oh, wow, okay, I might be able to put up with that a little bit better, right? Job doesn't even get that. Job just gets, hey, I'm God. You're not God. I'm so powerful. I have so much knowledge. Just trust me. And look at Job's response in chapter 42. Look at verses 1 through 6 if you want. You make some comments if you want to.
Sure. Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do everything, and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from me or from you. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Therefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes.
I love verse 5. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear. Now my eye sees you. He didn't see God literally with his eyes. but he heard the things God had done. It's like, I see you now. Like, I see deeper. I see you. So he repents in dust and ashes. In verses 7 through 9, he rebukes his friends, those 3 friends. He says, and by the way, your Eliphaz and your other 2 buddies, they did not speak what was right. This book should also show us that, hey, sometimes when you're going through something, you might have people in your life that give you bad advice, right? Or maybe they think, hey, you're only going through this because his buddy said you're only going through this because you're in sin, right? And we know from the outside looking in, they didn't know this either. That wasn't the reason he was going through it. It's the exact opposite. He was going through it. It's because God had so much trust in Job. He literally cared more about vindicating Job's character than he cared about the things Job had to go through. So he rebukes his friend, and then read verses 10 through 17.
And the Lord restored Job's losses when he prayed for his friends. Indeed, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. You said 10, right?
Through 17.
Oh, my bad, dude. I was wondering, why are you staring at me?
Pause is good every once in a while.
And then all his brothers, all his sisters, and all those who had been his acquaintances before, they came to him and ate food with him in his house. They consoled him and comforted him for all the adversity that the Lord had brought upon him. Each one gave him a piece of silver and each a ring of gold. Now the Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 female donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he called the name of the first Jemima, I guess.
Handsome as the day.
Yemima?
Handsome as the day.
The name of the second is Handsome as the Day.
Handsome as the day is Jemima.
Cassia,
a fragrance.
The name of the third was Karen Hapuk.
The colorful ray, or the horn of color.
In all the land were found no women so beautiful as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them an inheritance among their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years.
After all that, he lived 140 years.
Yeah, add that up to how old he was earlier.
Yeah.
Saw his children and grandchildren for 4 generations. So Job died old and full of days.
The LXX Septuagint has a note that says he died at 240 years of age. Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's
I think it sounds close
accurate.
to right.
It would make sense if...
I've looked at that at some other point. I don't remember.
It's like,
been years,
age of Abraham. If you think about what age Abraham was, this would have been about the same time as Abraham.
I think it could have been, yeah. I think because of the age, maybe it was just before him or something. It's between Noah
Abraham?
and Abraham.
Yeah,
I would
think
put
it's
it
after
between
Babel.
Noah and Abraham.
Yeah.
It's after Noah because you see him die around 600 or so years of age, and lifespans start decreasing from there. But Abraham was not 200 years. What did he live to? 100 and what?
So I'm looking at Genesis 11, which is the Tower of Babel, and it gives you the descendants before Abram. And it says, let's see, Shem was 100 years old. He begot Arphaxad. Shem lived for 500 years. So Shem lived for 600 years about. Let's see. Let's jump down. Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg, and then he lived 430. All right, so that's still quite a ways. You get down to Nahor. All right, Nahor, who would be the grandfather of Abraham, lived 29 years and then lived 119. So a couple generations. Here you go. This makes more sense. This one, Reu, R-E-U, lived 32 years. This is Genesis 11:20, and begot Serug. After he begot Serug, he lived 207 years. So that would be someone that lived 239 years. So that is one generation, 2, 3, about 3 or 4 generations before Abram.
Yeah.
Where you got 240 years. So it could be everything from like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 generations before Abraham, likely when Job would have lived.
Yeah.
But yeah, he lives old enough to have 10 grown children, and then everybody dies, and then he sees those 10 more children to the 3rd and 4th generation of grandchildren. So, I mean, when you put all that together, the idea of evil, pain, and suffering, a lot of evil things happen because of the curse, because of sin. Don't be mad at God. Be mad at the devil, right? Second of all, you have free will. Some people make bad decisions. But when you look at the answer to evil, pain, and suffering from God's perspective, what was God's answer? God's answer is, look at all the things I've done. Look at how mighty my creation is, the universe. Look at the animal life. In fact, we'll throw some videos on the podcast resource page about some of the amazing animals that God's created. I'll give you one I just ran into. I was cleaning our barn, I don't know, when I was tearing that little overhang down, and I saw through the window on the inside of my barn this massive wasp. I mean, it was humongous. And so I go in there, and of course, it's it's like way bigger than any wasp I've ever seen. So I don't want to get stung by it, but I want to kill it and look at it. So I kill it and look at it. I'll show you the picture. We'll put a picture of what it actually was on the screen, like with the information, but I want to show you how big it was. It's this massive wasp, and after I killed it, I put it on top of the garbage can. See if I can show it to you. All right. So look how big that thing is. Right. It had what came out of the back of it, a stinger that was 4 inches long. And I Google back searched it to see what it was. And I'll put it up on the screen. I forget the name of what it was. But essentially, when I started reading about it, it was like this giant eucaminid wasp or something. And I'm like, why does it have a 4-inch stinger? And the information was like, this is a wasp that crawls along logs and listens for the larvae of a different opponent wasp that live down in the wood. And it takes that stinger and it bores it like 3 or 4 inches down into the wood and stings it, the larvae, to paralyze it, and then injects an egg through that stinger ovipositor down into this log. And then that larvae will hatch and feed off of that larvae. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's a wasp that I've never heard of that can bore 4 inches into wood with its little thin stinger. I mean, like the animal world is just ridiculous when you start looking into some of these. A lightning bug. Last night, we're outside. Lightning bugs flying up all over the place, right? And I'm catching them. My daughter wants to see them.
Yeah.
They got chemicals they mix together that cause a reaction. Lights it up, doesn't kill it. I mean, can you think of other?
No, I mean,
I got lots of other animals I
can
can start ranting about, but
random animal. I mean, I like the platypus. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a weird animal.
Yeah.
I think it's just really cool and weird. I don't
It's
know. There's a lot of cool animals. We watch a lot of those Wonders of Creation videos on AP sometimes.
yeah, we'll put some of those in the podcast.
Yeah. Go look those up on Apologetics Press.
Yeah.
We have some of them on Apologetics Press. We have some on our app too. You can go look there. You can visit AP through our app. Good stuff. Those are really good videos. Exactly what you're talking about.
Bombardier beetle.
Bombardier beetles on there.
Chemicals mixed together, they blow out at like boiling temperatures. Leviathan, Job 41.
Oh, yeah.
If you believe the Bible, then I don't have to have an argument with me about whether Leviathan existed or not. A fire-breathing dragon.
The thorny devil lizard or whatever it was on there.
Is the one that shoots blood out of his eyes?
I think so. And it's like it drinks through its feet. So it's like it just walks into a puddle.
Yeah.
And it uses capillaries to it suctions up all the water to its mouth and it just drinks.
Yeah.
So it just walks up and it just absorbs water. I'm like, that's pretty cool, man.
Kyle, I did a lesson at Apologetics Press summer camp, and Kyle Butt spoke like the next morning, and I stayed there. And he did a lesson on the hagfish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was another good one.
Have you ever seen the hagfish? Essentially,
I saw that video. We watched it last week as a little thing to add at around Bible time or something.
Does he have a video on the hagfish?
Yeah, he does.
Does he have the picture of the trunk? The trunk so the hagfish, whenever it gets threatened, it shoots out like enough slime to fill a 5-gallon.
About the slime and how it like wrings itself out and everything.
Yeah.
Like it wraps
so that's his
itself
video.
Up in a knot and slides.
Okay.
Out.
Well, we're gonna put that video in the podcast resource page, because essentially when it's threatened, it can produce a 5-gallon bucket full of slime immediately in under half a second to protect itself. And so Kyle was like, now, what would happen if, say, somebody was transporting a trunk full of these hagfish and they happened to get in an accident? Have you seen this picture?
I have not.
So apparently this guy was carrying a trunk full of hagfish and had an accident. And look at all the slime on the road. Like hundreds of gallons of slime.
Oh, man.
So if you want to get on Google and if you're watching this, search hagfish car accident and look at all the slime. National Geographic actually did a video about it. But we'll put in the podcast resource page, we will put a link to Kyle's video on hagfish and some other animals. But there's so many things in this world to create a world that God created that men will spend their whole lifetime studying the woodpecker, how its tongue goes up and around its brain to protect it from the impact, like stuff that there's no way it would have evolved, right? And God created all these things in an instant. He just spoke them into existence. He didn't practice. He didn't have to try again. Oh, I should have made the hagfish a little bit different. Let me redo it. Like, what kind of power and immense intelligence does that even, I mean, you can't even fathom it. And yet God, in his answer to evil, pain, and suffering, is look at the things I created and trust me. Just trust me. If there's ever something you can't figure out a reason for, just know that one day, if you get a chance to ask God, he's going to have a perfect explanation for it. Don't let the reason that you turn away from God or the faith be something that you just don't quite understand.
Yeah.
Seek answers. And if it's something, Deuteronomy 29:29, if it's a secret thing God hasn't revealed, you'll get an answer one day. Just don't allow that to be what leads you away from God. All right. Over an hour. Scott, appreciate you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. Took my headphones off because it's starting to hurt my ears. Been wearing them all day. So thank you for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. I'm Aaron. This is Scott. We'll see you back on the next episode. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Thanks for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. If you want to watch the rest of this episode or other episodes, you can go to our website, gbntv.org, and click on the On Demand section. Or you can go to YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, or you could download the Gospel Broadcasting Network app. Just go in the App Store, search Gospel Broadcasting Network, download the app, and you can watch this show and many other great shows and learn more about the Bible. Thanks for watching the Authentic Christian Podcast. We'll see you back on the next episode.